Hey folks, welcome back. I wanted to come to you today because there's been something that's kind of sort of been getting on my nerves. And it's kind of sort of important because there's a lot of real estate brokers out there who are either not attuned to all of the education out there, or they just are just stuck in this traditional real estate mindset, which is okay if that's what you just want to do. But I'm coming to you today because there's something that's been really irritating me. And that's if you think about how our media portrays particular stories, they always go for the negative and they always go for the sensationalized part of it. And nine times out of 10, what happens is it's designed to create a situation in which uh, people don't use their critical thinking skills in order to go, hold up, wait a minute. So I want you to think back when your real estate broker was taking you around all of these particular houses and you settled on a particular house based on what you were considering at the time versus how you felt like you might have felt like you were steered away from the house that you wanted for a house that may not. Well, first of all, whenever you feel that way, it's probably happening either because the real estate broker is steering you away from a particular house that might have like a buyer's compensation of 1% or so for the 3%. Yeah, that happens. And with the current lawsuits and whatnot, we've already seen people who are real estate brokers say, "Well, I'm not going to show a house unless it has my minimum." And to me, that's not representing you well. Well, it's not representing you at all. It's actually the real estate broker putting their interest of getting a commission in front of your interests and what your preferences are in order for them to profit more on it. So let's talk about auctions. Let's talk about how all of that happens and how all of that affects our lives. The sensationalization of news media is really surprising on the impact of various aspects of our lives. Anywhere from the COVID thing, all the way to it could be just your neighbor. Everybody thinks that he's a pretty nice guy and whatnot. Come to find out, he got in a car accident. He's being arrested for 12 counts of murder. You never know. I mean, that's just how sensationalized they are. But let's explore how this trend affected something seemingly unrelated, and that's auctions. Uh, and I want to say this because there's a lot of misinformation that's going out there. So we've all seen it, news headlines that scream for our attention. Uh, this house is going up for auction because of foreclosure, or for this or for that. The stories are designed to shock and captivate. And it's the bread and butter of the modern media sensation. I call it negative sensationalization, but other people are like, "Well, you're just being Mr. Negative," and it's like, no, I'm actually telling you that everything that you see in the news media is not there for anybody's benefit other than the media, because they make money off the negative impact of a particular news story. And we see that with politics. We see that with just about anything. If a church has a food giveaway, you have one media outlet says it's something positive, and then you have like 12 that say, condemn the church because they should be taxed at a rate that puts them out of business. But the thing about it is what if I told you that the hunger for sensational stories has a trickle down effect that really impacts everything that we do, especially in the auction industry? And a lot of people don't think that this happens. So auctions, you wonder, what do they have to do with sensationalized media? Well, a lot more than you might think. The media's consistent need for sensational stories just doesn't affect the news cycle. It seeps into our perceptions, influencing our buying behaviors and our decisions. In the real estate market, it even affects the how your real estate broker will steer you away from an auction for a traditional real estate sale because that's what they're comfortable with. But they never ask anything about the auction. I actually came up with uh, a 1.5 hour introduction to auctions and working with auctioneers, and it's been watched by 3 real estate brokers. Only 3, which tells me that they have no interest in ensuring that the buyer's representation is complete. So that tells me a couple of things. One is either they're not interested in the education, they're not interested in knowing anything, or they're more willing to buy the negative sensationalization, which to me, I think they're buying into the negative sensationalization versus anything else. And that's a shame because you can't fully represent your buyers unless you have a full armament of tools at your whim in order to help them buy a house, right? So take the world of auctions, for instance. When a rare item hits the auction block, you'd expect the bids to reflect the price of the true value, correct? But here's the twist. Sensationalized media coverage can actually distort these auctions. How? By hyping up the story behind an item, creating a frenzy, and inflating its perceived value. Well, let's go down through real estate. Historically, you would have somebody who may have gone bankrupt, or they may have gone into foreclosure, or they may have other issues that required them in order to sell the house or be foreclosed on and be sold on the courthouse block. Well, 9 times out of 10, you would have an attorney out there selling the property, and they would do very little in order to market the property. Well, we all know as real estate brokers that in order for you to fully be able to get the appropriate pricing for a particular house, is you have to literally put it out there. MLS, flyers, your 80,000 people who are there, that your sphere, potential clients, you know the whole deal. Attorneys don't do that. Attorneys hang a paper in the courthouse and then they turn around and say, that's good enough. Then on auction day, people will show up, and most of those are investors, and they will always bid about 10% of the value of the property because they don't know what they're walking into. It could be a nightmare, it could be a hurricane. My house looks like a hurricane hit it twice. But that's not the point. The point is that anytime that your perceived value is 10% of whatever the thing is, then all of a sudden the stigma attaches to the word. So when we say auction, everybody rolls their eyes back saying, oh, great, we're going to get 10% of the value of the property and this, that, and the other. That's not true. That's only for the courthouse. If you go and you see year over year the number of auctions that are had in the United States on real estate from real estate brokers who are also auctioneers, you will notice that you will get anywhere from 76% to 120% of the value, just like if it was a traditional real estate brokerage sale. However, there's a couple of things that are different. One is the seller drives the sale, not the buyer. There's no due diligence period. There's no earnest money deposit except for on the auction day when you have to cut a check in order to ensure that 21 days from the point that the hammer falls, you can come and you can close. So really, there's no contingencies, there's no negotiations outside of price, and it really represents the seller better. When we say there's no due diligence period, we mean there's no due diligence period. You have to do all of your due diligence up front, and that's a buyer paid thing. Yes, but the buyer can also ask for credit when it goes to closing. They can ask for it. Are they going to get it? We don't know. So when we take a look at all of this stuff, The idea of, oh, woe is me, auctions are the worst thing since sliced bread, could potentially be a detriment to a real estate broker who's not representing their clients wholly, fully, and with all of the best interests that they have in the world. So picture this. You have a luxury house that's out there, and it's been sitting there for 6.5 months, and there hasn't been so much as a person who batted an eye. And it might be worth $6 million, it might be worth $2 million. You never know. Well, since it's been on the days on the market has been 6 months at $6 million. Let's put that as an example. All of a sudden, we're talking about, well, what do we do? We have to have a fast sale. Well, then I come walking in and I'm like, okay, we're going to take full pictures. We're going to do the drone footage. We're going to do all of this other stuff. Mr. Seller, I need $12,000 in order to market this property. And by the way, the property will be sold on this date, if that's okay with you, and they have to come and close 21 days after that. Is that okay? Well, seller would be like, well, that's great. That's a lot better than the 6 months it's been sitting on the market. So we go down through, and on the auction day, we actually get a $7.5 million bid for a property that's been sitting there for 6 months for $6.5 million. Is that okay? Do you see that in the news? You'll never see that in the news. Well, you'll see it in a business journal, but that's about it. And it'll be just one of those small remarks saying, blankety blank's house in blankety blank neighborhood sold for blankety blank. And that'll be the single line thing. However, if you want to see, real news, go to the same business journal and you will see housing foreclosures, interest rates going crazy, this, that, and the other. Oh, the world's coming to an end. They always pump up the world's coming to an end, not the one good piece of news saying that the housing market is still good under the auction method of marketing. See what I'm saying? So if news outlets splash the headlines out there that says that auctions are just as poignant and just as relevant as traditional real estate, or in some cases better, how do you think real estate brokers would feel? So now it gets interesting, because the frenzy caused by the sensationalized media can artificially inflate the price of a house or a book or, a cell phone. Or, if you remember going on eBay ages ago and you wanted an iPhone 3, you could easily, bankrupt your entire house by, bidding on one of those things. But nowadays, you can go down around the corner and you can pick one up for $200-300. And if you want a new iPhone X 37 or whatever it is now, because I don't do iPhones, you might be looking at $1,000 to $2,000. But anyway, when we are taking a look at real estate and the price of these things are going through the roof, bidders are influenced by the hype. And who's better to hype up the value of a real estate property than a real estate auctioneer? They might end up offering far more than the actual value of the property, and that's fine. They just have to make sure that they're pre-qualified before they step up to the table and start bidding. And who wins in this scenario? Well, not all of the bidders are going to win. And that's something that a lot of real estate brokers don't like. They prefer that their client wins. Well, their client, if they want their client to win, their client has to come and make sure that they're willing to bid and they're willing to get ready to close. We're not sitting here waiting for financial contingencies, because that's a contingency that commonly we do not accept. There are no contingencies at auction, and that's one of the things that drives a lot of real estate brokers insane. But it's not the bidders that win, but it's the sellers that win as far as the auction are concerned, because they now have a transaction to which the problem that they have of not being able to unload their real estate is now sold. Um, but on the other side of it too is, but who also wins? Well, the media wins. Who gets a sensational story to feed the masses, because that's what they do, is they feed sensationalization, sensationalized stories to people for a dollar or two, or for their paywall. But what happens afterward? When the media hype dies down and the true value of the item surfaces, bidders realize that they might have overpaid for the item, isn't worth as what they thought, or the house isn't worth what they thought. It's a stark reminder that uh, sensationalization of anything can create a perceived value of something. And whenever that sensationalization goes through, then poof, all of a sudden everybody's sober. Now, before you say anything, just remember, not too long ago, probably in 2020 through 2022, we had people who were overbidding each other through these escalation clauses of anywhere from 50,000 to 100,000 to $500,000 over the price of a house. And now they're coming saying, well, that was a mistake, because now I'm upside down in a property that supposedly appraised for $500,000 more than the market would say that it was worth. But guess what? Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Now you're upside down in the mortgage because the market has changed. So the sensationalization and the hype allowed that to happen, and now we're going to see a crash. Whereas at auction, you're actually bidding against other people who are there who want to bid. And that price keeps going up according to what some individuals are already ready to pay for. Uh, and the sensationalization comes in from mostly the real estate brokers. Most of the real estate brokers will say, well, you don't want auction because it's going to be garbage property and this, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah. Here's a nice traditional house for $7.5 million at 6% interest. And oh my God, we get kickbacks of $30,000 if you buy this house. And they go to an auction and they actually bid on it, and there's broker participation, and they get from what, to maybe 2-3%. What are they going to go with? So you have to understand that when you're talking about real estate brokers, you have to have somebody who's going to have your full interest in mind as far as a buyer's agency is concerned. Doesn't matter if it's a traditional real estate, if it's I'm going to sell it to my neighbor Joe, or if it's going to be at auction. So what's the takeaway? What's really the takeaway for all of this? And it's not just about auctions. It's about being aware of how sensationalization shapes our perceptions and decisions. And at auction, it commonly is going to be set by prices, right? So you're going to walk in and say, well, this house here, well, it's worth $6.5 million. I'm willing to do $1 million over. And then that's where you set your boundaries. So you have to take some of the sensationalization, but then transition that over to an actual plan as to how or what you're willing to pay for a particular product or service or whatever. So it's all about pausing and doing your own research and setting your own stopgaps, and not letting the flashy headlines dictate your choices, because you could very easily find yourself upside down, which so many people who are buyers have now. Some of these buyers can't scrape 2 nickels to rub together in order to buy an apple now, because 100% of their paycheck now goes directly to the mortgage or the HOA fees or some other thing it is. But it doesn't matter if you're doing traditional real estate or if you're actively bidding on an auction. It's important to make those decisions as to what you're going to pay, and how you're going to pay for it, and how it reflects on your ability to do so. So anyway, to wrap everything up, back in the 1950s, everybody basically did it at the courthouse steps, which is great. But now, today, through technology and whatnot, anybody on the planet can bid on property. It's just a matter of actually sitting down, registering, and making sure that you have all of the documents, disclosures, and everything in order to make the proper decisions. And take the sensationalized stuff out. I call it sensationalized garbage. But if you take all that sensationalized garbage out and you can actually logically think through, then you'll probably be okay. What we have found was that the media was sensationalizing real estate back in 2022. The real estate brokers were sensationalizing real estate in 2022. Of course, they had a vested interest in pumping up real estate. And now we're going to see uh, a correction from the real estate side of it because of that particular pumping up and whatnot. So, folks, thanks for tuning in. It's good to see you. Happy holidays. And I'm getting ready to go smoke 24 beautiful pork butts for my scout unit. And, just remember it's essential to ensure that you avoid the sensationalization and actually logically think through anything, especially when it comes to auctions and real estate. And just remember, I am your auctioneer and your real estate broker. My name is Matt Price, and my phone number is 919-614-6288. Like, subscribe, forward. Go down and take a look at that Auctions for Realtors course if you're sitting there and you got a new device or an iThing. I think it'll open your eyes. Have a great holiday. Thanks.